Hello guys, it's been 2 months, and as promised, we are back. Today I just thought about making this video because I know a lot of juniors get confused about what backend is and where it ends. So I came up with this script. This first step, how a noob, a mid, or a pro developer could make a database connection. This is PHP, and I hope I will make you love it by the end of this video. And inside I have advice that could shorten your learning curve. That is a promise. So let's get started. What I started here is how a noob starts database connections. They will add variables to the database connection function. The values are usually these four: host, the IP address or host name the database will use; user, the account that will be using the database; password, the password for that account; database name, the database that the system wants to connect to. Not that it will help you much right now, so don't burn your brain cells yet. Forget I said anything about that. This right here is the important line that we need. New SQL I. This initiates a MySQL I class that initializes the connection to the database. From there, just think of it as using that class's functions to connect and command the database. That, my friends, is the beginning and the most important part of backend. But not so fast. We are going to create an index file that will be our access point to the server in the environment of the project, and we're going to include the connection file we made into the index file, which the server knows is the first file to run naturally. Oh, it seems we have an error. Of course we have an error. We did not create the database, so MySQL I's error handler is telling us that it could not find the database. So let's just create one really fast. Now we have no error. The echo we added printed just fine. Of course, we also have this extra chat text at the end that I added in the index file, which is why we are seeing that, but we don't even need it. And now we are fine. That is how a noob will do database connection. Just add the connection file anywhere it's needed. Now, here comes the wise mid-programmer. They are so clever that they make an .env reader class, a class that will read variables from their configuration file. Here's how it looks. They start with a constructor, put in a default path. Dir will return the path of wherever the class is executed from. So this is telling the class that from where you're standing now, there must be something with the name env. That's our guy. Then we check with the inbuilt function file exists to make sure the path is right. If it is, then we populate the data variable using the load data function in the same class. That is what all this means, same class. Otherwise, stop the function and throw an error. Now here's how the load data function looks. It uses the inbuilt function file to load lines from the file and put them into an array. It receives the file path and other arguments, which are self-explanatory. Ignore new lines and skip empty lines. Now we run that array in a for each, processing each item in the array. First thing we do is check if the line starts with hack. If it does, we skip it. Yes, that's what continue does. For example, in our .env file, we are going to add hash here so that we can test it later. Second, we split every line into halves wherever it finds equals. And we also have these helper functions that we're going to use later to get variables, save new ones, etc. And now let's just move the connection variables to .env file before we continue. Looking good. Great. Now, count in if condition will help us handle edge cases. This will make sure only arrays with 2 items will pass through, and you can see the data is being added into keys or values. Value equals trim will remove quotes from text. So let me just make some changes in env file for future test. Now the data is pushed into env data array variable, which is returned. Therefore, populate this data. Now let me just add some comments there so that we can use them later. This built function will log text in PHP's log file. This will help us debug so that I can show you how the data was changed every single step. Now we are adding the files into index.php file using require once. You can use include, doesn't matter. But this will add our code into this file so that we can use the class. And also putting back the values that we took from the database connection. Let's see nreader in action. We can test it here. You can see that the file is still working, meaning we still have a connection, or in other words, the connection variables were added successfully. Now after that run, let's check the log. You can see here. This data printed was taken from the array returned by file. Next, the explode function split the strings into words and put them into arrays wherever we told it to split. Next, we skipped the commented line with heck. Finally, the data we wanted was returned. You can see it's only 3 values now, which means the 4th variable that we commented out with chat was skipped. And that's the data that is returned and populated into the class's data variable ready to serve. If we give them credit, the mid also has their own database classes. They create a database class that uses database functions from engines like MySQLi or PDO, and inside they create their own insert, create, query functions. These functions handle all the required steps for a task and return just the data or status. This way they can retrieve, check, or update data with a single line of code without going through the steps of binding and sanitizing again. But alas, you can still see that they need to manually add the database and tables. And finally, we have the pros. These guys are the oh lord. They make their own database class, add a singleton to the connection, meaning the database will always connect on itself, always use one connection or class singleton, which they claim improves speed. Their nreader class doesn't just save variables in an array. If you haven't noticed, it defines them in globals, in the server environment, and in arrays. This way, the data can be used anywhere, anytime, as long as the nreader was initialized before starting the app. Oh, and it's not just that. These guys configure their class so that if the database is not found during the first run or initialization, it creates the database immediately. No manual setup, no nothing. They can also add tables the same way, self-configured migration files. Talk about laziness. I promised great advice at the end, guys. If you have followed along, if you watched this whole thing, thank you. Here's the advice. Beyond Pro, we use frameworks. That's the circle. We start by despising frameworks. We take pride in our craftsmanship. Then time gets us, and we end up using frameworks anyway. If you didn't notice, I started building classes just to handle environment files and a database class that would do self-initialization and migrations. And what did I end up with? Something very close to Laravel. So whatever language you like after learning the fundamentals, it's okay to use frameworks. What? But don't start only with frameworks. You'll miss out on learning about security, optimization, what frameworks are actually abstracting away. Frameworks come with batteries included, but only someone knowledgeable knows when a framework is overkill. My recommendation, unique projects, craft them from scratch. That's where creativity shines. Contracts and client work, use frameworks. They save time, standardize code, and cover edge cases.